Good afternoon and welcome to our very special edition, our Christmas special of Unearthing with Sue and myself being Lavinia from the M Word. Look at Sue, you're looking rather festive.
I've made an effort.
You've made an
a rare
effort.
thing. Yes, I've got my twinkly lights. I've got my polar bear hat that used to have lovely, cute, fluffy ears. That because this was my child's hat that I've commandeered, but the ears have fallen off, and I've got a little bit of sparkle. Not that you can see it really on my scarf.
You are so good. I haven't got anything. In my defence, though, that's a good pun, isn't it? In my defence, I've just literally whizzed out of court, having being attended as tribunal with a lovely Sen Ninja who's supposed to be relaxing on holiday, but I tell you, she was definitely in court.
It's just unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, the powerful benefit of online stuff. You know that one person can be in a whole other country.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing, isn't it? I'd love to be soaking up the sun for sure. Anyway, Sue, what have we got today for our Christmas special? What have you got lined up for us to talk about today?
Well, it's just, I've just heard a door knock. Oh no, that's not good, is it? Typical timing. Oh well, I have to hope that the dog can answer it, but probably she won't. She's looking at it now. Let's hope she doesn't start barking. Yes, so Christmas, wow, it's looming large, and it is either a love or hate relationship, I think, that we have with Christmas, certainly in the autistic community. And I have been noticing some posts by some very articulate, wonderful people online, you know, talking about the joys and the pains, because it is quite a paradox. You know, it does divide. It can be an all-out extravaganza for some, which is really hard to contain, you know, with the build-up and the overwhelming excitement of it all. And this can be for any age. You know, there are plenty of adults out there who absolutely adore this time of year, but I'm not one of them. I'm what you call a humbug. So, you know, the fact that I've got my lights up, that's is
that your contribution?
This is my contribution, because I have to confess that is it. These lights, that's it. Nothing else is up. And I am in my 50th decade. 50th decade. It feels like my 50th decade. I'm in my 5th decade, and it's taken me this long to actually embrace the humbug in me and accept that, you know, Christmas isn't all what it's made out to be for me. And it is a very personal thing. I understand that, you know, it's different for everybody. But yeah, I'm just very aware that in my own family, there's a huge amount of conflict around Christmas. And we're just one family, you know, and I'm talking through the generations from my mother down. You know, my experience of Christmas just seems to bring this notion of discomfort, really. So talking about that.
Okay. So where do you want us to start with that? Because obviously it might help if we share maybe a couple of our experiences to kind of get a feeling for, given at the time, our unknown autistic traits. So what about you? What did you experience?
Yeah, well, I remember feeling real confusion as a little girl. You know, I'm talking about before the age of 10. So, you know, when I was really diddy, sorry, my hair's just gone all a bit awry now that I've taken my hat off. Yes, it was perplexing for me, because there was this change of routine. Obviously, there's a build up at school. I was in a Church of England school, so, you know, very much brought up in the tradition of Christian values. You know, we must attend church, we must do things in this set way at school. You know, so that was at the core of it for me. And I had a very traditional family setup for Christmas, which I was very privileged to have. You know, my mum used to fully embrace it. She loved the whole decoration thing. She'd be meticulous in it. There'd be this strict way of doing things because it really was important to her that the house looked good, that the decorations were all coordinated and, you know, spit spot. She was a Mary Poppins at Christmas, my mum. She was like a magician, and the house would be transformed. So to the little me, it was exciting and enthralling. And I used to love the sparkle of it all. And we had a chat the other day, and I remember the smells. You know, I've got very strong memory through my sense of smell. And I just remember the citruses and the cloves and the spice and the pine of the tree. And so that was exciting. And that used to keep me pretty transfixed. You know, I used to sit right by the tree and just stare at it. And I would really have the magical thinking that, you know, Father Christmas was going to come down that chimney. And my mum just went to town with that, you know, she really did go to town with that. And then my siblings came along, because I was an only child for the first 10 years of my life. My siblings came along. And then, you know, I'm at that age of 10. So obviously I've got a bit of history, you know, with what Christmas is like for my mum, and grown up out of it a little bit. And then all of a sudden it's back again with a flurry of complete spectacular sparkle and presents mayhem and all this excitement that my little brother and sister brought to it. And it is very much a childhood thing, isn't it? You know, it marks the year, it marks the end of the year, whether you're a Christian or not. You know, it became this end of year thing, you know, for a couple of weeks, as it still is to an extent. Although I do feel that, you know, it's slightly different now because of the global nature of things. And like with other celebrations, with Halloween, for instance, you know, we've taken on some American attitudes, I think, and the capitalist nature of it, without being political. You know, I'm not a political person. But the capitalist culture of, you know, spend more, buy more, get the biggest, best, you know, present for your child, all that crazy shopping. I mean, it is crazy. And I haven't done it. I have to admit, I haven't done that crazy shopping thing for a few years now. Because I just, you know, I don't cope with it. I don't tolerate all the crowds. But when you're a little girl and you're dragged round by your mum, who's in a frenzy of must get this and must get that, and, you know, do all the Christmas cards by a certain time. I used to write all the names and addresses on the envelopes so mum could crack on with the cards. I used to try and help out in the kitchen with peeling veggies. It just seemed like this factory of stuff in the build up. And then Christmas Day is over, and then there's this like, oh, is that it? And so that was confusing to me.
So my experience is, I have a really sweet photograph. I say it's sweet, it's very embarrassing sweet, but my mother was very insistent that the tree was the big thing. Lots of coloured lights. And I don't know if you remember, they had a type of snow that was actually made of fiberglass and actually quite dangerous. You could cut yourself on it, which is now banned. So she would decorate this all around the tree, but the lights would twinkle. and this extraordinary smell of the tree. I just loved it, really loved it. But we weren't allowed to open any presents until, well, first of all, we had to dress up. So this very sweet photograph is of me with a frock that she'd made, and she'd put snow fur around the bottom of my pink dress. And it was quite a comical picture because I had to have my hair done. And I think I must have been about 3 at most. Had to have my hair done and curled. And I'm sitting there with the most grubby old socks on, fluffy slippers, but this very posh frock and my hair done. And then we were allowed to open our presents after we had sat through watching the Queen at 3 o'clock. So there was a real process. You could open your stocking, but the stocking was filled and put at the end of the bed. And it was filled with like satsuma, another piece of fruit, very small things that were incredibly cheap and cheerful. And then you'd have one big present and invariably 2 or 3 other presents, but there wasn't the volume that there is now. And after the Queen's speech and after opening all the presents, then we would have this formal sit down to dinner. And it was just food everywhere. Just, you know, and you had to wear your paper hats out of your crackers. There was no, oh, I'm not going to do it. And I absolutely hated it because it always fell over my eyes. There had to be Christmas music or choir-like music to hear in the background. And like you say, there was all these Christmas decorations. Going forward as an adult, I then ended up having to think about how I would do things. So I tried my hardest, and every year it just got harder and harder and harder, till in the end, just give up. And my youngest daughter suggested that we have a onesie day. And I think that was about 5 years ago. So for 3 years in a row, we had a onesie day with the bare minimum up, a real tree, but invariably they get smaller and smaller and have a bigger pot to repot. But just this sense of what the heck's going on here, because it doesn't feel right, where everybody's breaking a neck and really panicking, and children are opening up these presents and tucking the paper all over there, and they're not really appreciating what they have. And I know that things have changed radically, but it's so stressful. Mm-hmm. So utterly stressful. And just before I came out of court this morning, I checked in with John, who's now traveling back up from Cornwall, and he was talking about how he was planning to have a cooked breakfast en route. And he got literally to the top of Plymouth and realized that he was blocked off from going up onto the A30, where he was banking on getting his Greg's breakfast, because there was just queues. And he was like, oh, I'm not entertaining that. So he went back down to Plymouth, but I'm not going to go and stop anywhere. And then literally got himself to Bristol and thought, I know, I'll go to Cribbs End, and thought, why would I even think about tolerating the traffic? I'll just keep driving. Because in his mind, nobody goes Christmas shopping at a motorway services.
Well, now we've got these massive motorway services that are literally all singing, dancing by every option. So when you're on your way to your folks up in Scotland or wherever, you know, the other end of the country, or your siblings or whatever, it's, you know, it's grab on the way, isn't it? You know, there is this extreme ramping up of demands, and I think that is the huge thing to navigate for autistic people, that, you know, it does seem like such a minefield and can very quickly, very easily become overwhelming. And I like the good, the bad and the ugly here, because it is that. I mean, you know, there are wonderful aspects, you know, don't get me wrong. I'm not an easy humbug. I have fought this label, this self-identified label. Nobody else, well, my mum might have called me a humbug once or twice, but there are certain aspects that are magical, the sparkle, the glitter, the lovely sensory experience of food at this time of year. Food is so important, isn't it? And such a comfort. But then there's the ugly side, which is when people perhaps have consumed too much alcohol, and perhaps they are family members who are visiting.
Yeah.
So to a young person who's, to everybody, not just young people, your home is your sanctuary, and you control that as an adult, as a parent. You're very much the master of your own castle. Your home is your castle. And then at Christmas, inevitably, there's much more traffic in and out of that front door, people coming and going much more than normal. And those people bring obviously huge amount of gifts and excitement, or perhaps not, perhaps they're absolutely dreading the experience, and so they proceed to get wildly drunk. I can put my hand up and say, when I've had to visit extended family at Christmas time or New Year or other celebration times of year, I would just quietly tipple away at the alcohol, to cope. And I think that is something that I needed to do to mask. And so when a situation that is a busy, highly expectant social situation for any person, no matter what age, we have our coping mechanisms, don't we? And if the senses are overwhelmed, then you resort to your stress response, and for some people that could be anger. They might get very vocal and quite tetchy and irritable. And for some people, they disappear, they want to hide, they want to run away. And certainly for my son, I can relate to an experience where we had his bigger siblings descend on us. They've one of them's got quite a few children, and so we had a very big house full in a very small space. We only had a small cottage at the time. This is going back a few years. And my youngest was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and he just disappeared. And I would find him in his bedroom happily, on his bed, building his Lego, usually building Lego, very quietly, and he was totally content. But then, of course, the siblings, the other family, are like, where's he gone?
Yeah.
Why isn't he down here? Yeah. And I would persuade him, I would, because there's that sort of pressure. Okay, we're all going to be together for a meal, for example. We're all going to sit round this table and be together for this one meal. And I must admit, I used to coerce him to do that. And I know he didn't want to, but I did. And now that he's a teenager and very vocal about his needs, I respect that he is easily overwhelmed by lots of people. I think it's the noise, it's the busyness, it's the sort of extra energy. He really struggles with energy, an atmosphere. When the atmosphere is ramped up a bit, there might be more music. There's obviously going to be more talking, more conversation. So I think that is a huge factor for people. And then for those autistic children that are still finding their way with their identity, who are perhaps non-speaking, who are perhaps unable to speak up, even if they are, speaking, then, that's quite a scary thing. You know,
It is, and it was just crossing my mind as you were speaking about how there's so much pressure. You know, when we use the word coerce or, you know, the expectation, it's that real pressure to conform, isn't it? Which is really scary because our young people generally don't want to upset people. They don't generally want to be difficult or not seen as being part of it. But there's something about those sensory experiences, isn't there, that really makes it difficult for us. And I know that, say for example, we've got lots of young people who have a beige diet. They don't want turkey and they definitely don't want vegetables. Thanks very much. What they really want is what they have as a staple diet most nights in the week, called chicken nuggets, chips. Thanks very much. I'll have loads of those. And I guess it's kind of in considering how they can embrace that as being part of something, but also not expecting them to conform. You know, if you think about ADHD, not wanting to sit and chat over a lengthy meal, and particularly if you're impacted by the noise, you know, if you've got more people, there's going to be more noise, isn't there? And if people are drinking, you know, adults drinking large amounts of alcohol, invariably what we find is they're chattering and laughing. That volume increases, doesn't it? So it's thinking about so many different sensory impacts, isn't it? But also that real feeling of having to conform. It's quite an expectation, you know, as we put in the banner, wasn't it? It's a really heavy expectation, isn't it?
It's a big one, because when you've an extreme demand avoidant profile, that's a massive trigger to have this weight of expectation. You know, my youngest is very sensitive to that expectation on a day-to-day basis, and that is massively increased at Christmas. I mean, we've had our own conundrum, COVID aside. You know, obviously COVID has really impacted what's happening at Christmas these last couple of years. But there was a plan afoot by my sibling, my sister, to have us over, and you know, that was immediately met when I suggested it very gently to my boy. Oh, we've been invited out for Christmas dinner. I don't think I even finished the sentence, and it was met with a no. I'm not going. No, you can go. I'm not going. And so I backed off. But you know, this is me as mum, who has done a huge amount of work on what she says and when she says it and how she says it, you know, to avoid any avoidance. You know, it's that whole preparing what to say. Don't just say what I want to say immediately, you know, really think about how I deal with this. So I stepped back. I thought, okay, well, I've told him now. And then I thought, I'll come back to this another time when he's calm, or, you know, just as an aside. So we had a think about, you know, maybe we go and it can just be for a few hours. It's not for the whole day. You know, we can just show our faces for the afternoon, and it means I don't cook. You know, it's a win for me. No, you know my answer. Why are you even asking? And this is my boy, who is incredibly articulate and has found the courage of late to speak up. But, you know, for those young people who perhaps are still finding their voice and still trying to understand their own neurology, you know, because demand avoidance takes over. It is like another level of thinking. It's a completely contradictive thinking.
Yeah.
And he accepts his demand avoidance, and he acknowledges it. And he then gets cross with me because he says, Mum, you should know better by now. But of course, the extended family, this is a big thing for lots of families. You know, it's the extended family that perhaps might struggle to get their head around your demand avoidant child, or your child who is clearly in some sort of stress response, perhaps very upset, very distressed, unable to verbalize that, you know, but showing it in their body, and the family members who aren't so familiar or perhaps aren't so accepting, for whatever reason, you know, that's really hard to navigate, isn't it, for your young person? And they end up feeling invalidated because, you know, more often than not, we're just trying to keep the peace and keep everybody happy. As mums, certainly as mums, we're trying to keep the whole status quo, aren't we, for everybody?
I was just thinking, if people don't understand, they tend to get quite grumpy, don't they? If traditionally, sorry, so just to backtrack a little bit, you and I, when we were little, our parents would say, children should be seen and not heard. Okay, job done. But when you still have that air of children should not be seen, should be seen and not heard, i.e., their opinions don't count. And we're challenging that by saying, well, actually, this is causing too much stress around. Why do we need to do this? In some respects, we're not only challenging the individual who's demanding, you know, where are they? We should be together as a family, but we're also challenging the tradition.
The tradition.
What have you got to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tradition with a capital T, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because there is this unspoken rule around Christmas. You know, we're brought up in it. It's our culture, our immediate culture, isn't it? And we tend to follow the matriarch. That's the sort of general rule of thumb. You know, whatever the matriarch wants is what goes.
Yeah.
And we all want to try and please. And certainly my recollection of Christmas throughout my first 10 years, it was one of just one pressure after another, you know, down to what we wore, like you said with your dress. You know, I was told to wear jumpers, and I hate wool, lamb's wool. It's too prickly for me. It's actually really, really unsettling for me to wear wool. And a lot of the time, you know, you're given a hand-knitted Christmas jumper that you must wear. And I just remember being so upset that I had to wear these particular clothes. But also the order of things, that, you know, we weren't allowed to change that. You know, you must do this thing at this set time. You know, and I do remember huge anxiety, and I still feel it now. I still acknowledge it now as an adult, of unwrapping things in front of people. How horrible that is, because all eyes are on you.
On you.
You have to then see what it is, because you haven't got a clue. You know, it's that element of surprise. And again, it's a love-hate thing. You either love a surprise or you hate it. I don't particularly like surprises myself. And then if you don't like the thing, you've then got to pretend that you do. And there's the expectation to say thank you immediately, even if you don't like it.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's all these rules, and woe betide that you go against them. I mean, I'm making my mum sound like a complete horrible person, but it was like she became this other person on Christmas Day, you know, because it was so clearly routine driven for her. This is what happens in this way. And she was very rigid on that. And so, you know, I just remember being pretty exhausted. And I took on that role. You know, we carry on the way our parents have parented us. And I do remember one Christmas working so hard, making every effort for it to be perfect, striving for the perfect Christmas, and, you know, did everything myself. and did do it, did all the shopping, all the cooking, everything. And I was absolutely depleted and burnt out and ill after Christmas Day, totally ill, because I put that expectation on myself because I was trying to continue the tradition.
Yeah. So I was just thinking a couple of things about this. The possible parent who does a lot of blogging, she took pictures, of her son wrapping up his own gifts. So he knew what they were beforehand. He chose the wrapping paper. He chose what to wrap, and actually he got quite creative in, I really like my scooter. I've had it all year. I'm going to wrap it up again because I know what it is. And I really like that idea because, of course, for those of you who don't like surprises, perfect. You not only get to open something you really like, you really wanted it as well. But also that understanding that we can't challenge the tradition, or can we? Because if we were to challenge the tradition, so say, for example, we have a huge influx of immigrants who have adopted the UK as their home, but not necessarily their cultures. And I feel very stressed at times. I'm aware that this year I try not to say Merry Christmas, everybody. I'm very much aware saying, have a lovely festive season, because not everybody is Christian. Not everybody wants to celebrate Christmas. Some people don't like Christmas whatsoever. So it's, bar humbug. And other people are very happy to celebrate and bring in the new year, which is definitely my preference. So I'm very keen. I'm changing my language to not offend. And so there is that understanding that, actually, could we challenge the tradition? Could we revoke it and say, why are we doing this? Why have we been doing this in such a way? And that led on to my thinking about, how do we get pressured? Because some of us have grandparents who've since died, who would have definitely been doing all of this, running around, like headless chickens, trying to get everything. But then I thought about how we have these constant TV adverts, the ones where the superstores are fighting against each other to who's got the best Christmas advert. And like Valentine's Day, not everybody wants to celebrate Valentine's Day. And certainly what is one perspective is not shared by all. And there is that real feeling of imposter syndrome and lying. Why is it the families get together and everything's jolly, and then they speak to each other for the rest of the year, which is a very long time, isn't it? So what's your take on all of that?
Yeah, wow, there's a lot there. So yes, in terms of the Christian religion, which is obviously, why we celebrate Christmas, supposedly, of course, that has been filtered out, hasn't it, with all our wonderful mix of ethnicity in this country now. And I too have really thought about this of late. I'm not quick to say Merry Christmas. I will say, all the best, or happy holiday, or, make sure you get a good break. Mainly to my female friends, it's all about rest and recoup, but yes, the TV adverts, especially, I know the impact they have on me. I'm a single mum. I don't have a lot of money to burn. I haven't been in work for quite some time. And when it's thrown in your face, literally, you can't avoid it with our main channels, although I do, because I choose to do the streaming services. That's one of the benefits. I am an advocate of the streaming services because I think it means I don't have to endure adverts. But it is very much an endurance. And I find myself muting them and even turning the telly off at times, because I have this resistance to it and a real discomfort inside myself. And so I've noticed that. And over the years, I have fought it. and challenged myself and pushed myself with masking. But now I've got to the point where I think, no, I am going to, think about others who are less well off. And I have always made a point of taking a load of stuff to the charity shops, being selective about who I support with money. So recently, I sent money for Afghanistan because that's, a huge crisis. I try and think about food banks. I have the ingrained Christian values because of my upbringing, but I don't go to church. So instead, I just think, okay, I'm going to reach out to somebody who I know is lonely. And, and I've been that person. And so I know what that feels like. And so just making perhaps 1 or 2 phone calls to that person that you know in your life who is potentially lonely at Christmas, it makes a big difference. And I love giving. I absolutely prefer 100% to give and not to receive. And so, I feel better for giving. And I'm not trying to make myself sound like I've got some sort of halo here. I'm not bigging myself up. I'm very, very good at, self-deprecating humor. But, this has not come easily for me to bow down to my instincts. I have fought my instincts to conform.
I think there's just so much pressure as well from obviously businesses, buy. But this, I think COVID has really challenged us quite considerably. There are so many other families now so impacted, they're not able to spend as much money. And so therefore they have to think very carefully about what is it you need or what is it you really, really want. But equally, there is that understanding, particularly last Christmas, where family is becoming so important, but still we are under pressure, it feels like, to have Christmas. And just thinking about the other side of people who are autistic, some people just have to decorate the house all over it, don't they? But not just the 12 days before Christmas and the 12 days afterwards. No. The minute they hit the shops in September or July, they're up. And it seems really strange. And I know it's a fun thing for some people, but for others, it's just truly a nightmare. My family, I've been dubbed the family, of out of all of us, I'm the one who's going, well, it'd be really nice.
Yeah.
But equally, there are some families going, yes, it's really nice. And it's just blinking everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I remember there was a house down the road in my neighborhood, where literally every inch of the exterior wall was covered in lights. And it was a spectacular thing. And we used to walk the dog round to see it because it was just phenomenal how many lights.
Yeah.
But certainly, the way the world's going, I wouldn't advocate for that heavy use of electricity in this day and age. That's why I've got my lovely one singular token string of lights. But yeah, I think it is such a personal thing, and we all know our limits. And I think it's just ingrained in certainly the female of the species that we do put ourselves at the bottom of the heap, and we will go all out to make everything as special as we can for our important people. And for me, my friends are my important people. And over the years, I have tried to see them. I do want to see my important people, especially my friends at this time of year, but it isn't always possible because they're miles away. And I think what I do now for my best friends is I think I'm going to send something that's really indulgent for you,
Yeah.
that helps prompt that self-care, because I think there's so many of us mothers that neglect ourselves, and
Mm, mm,
we're the last person to think of in this, and certainly doing it differently for me is key, for my well-being. And
mm.
my self-care involves keeping everything close, everything pretty restrained, quiet. I really enjoy a pajama day. It used to be onesies. Onesies have gone out of fashion.
Clearly.
Yeah, a pajama day, and eating what I want when I want to. I haven't bought a turkey for quite some time. I actually don't like turkey. And last Christmas, I was completely on my own for the first time.
Wow.
My children were with their fathers. Oh, and this is something I meant to mention earlier as well. For our young people who have split families, it's an added stress, obviously,
Stress.
because they feel this other double expectation to be with both sets of families, both
Yeah.
parents, equally as possible. And yeah, and that can't always happen. But last year, both of my boys were with their dads, and I was alone. And I actually enjoyed it. I was dreading it. I won't lie. I was dreading it, but I enjoyed it because I could do what I wanted. Who would have thought? I didn't have to do a single thing that I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And so I stayed in my pajamas until I had to walk the dog. Obviously, I couldn't stay in my pajamas for that. I went for a lovely walk around I lived somewhere more rural than here, and so I was in the woodland and just enjoyed being out and about. And then I think I made pancakes, and and that was it. I mean, I
So
might have
there's
had a
something
glass of
really
Bailey.
nice. There's something really nice about doing that, isn't there? About having the luxury of time to just do whatever you want without any pressure around tradition, I guess. Who has pancakes on Christmas Day? I mean, that's a novelty for me, Sue. And I really like that because, you can do that any time of the day, can't you? And nobody think it odd. But equally, you can wander around your home in your PJs, not having that pressure either. I guess the thing that is beginning to be teased out of all of this is thinking about how do we get away from the pressure of things, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I have given this a lot of thought lately, and I think it's. I mean, I've done a card to remind me of things to say, because I sort of forget easily.
Yeah.
These things that we could see as alternatives or adjustments. Let's think of it like, Christmas, like the school environment, for example. I mean, I know it sounds really quite boring, but why not look at it like that, as in, the home environment, your castle, your sanctuary,
Yeah.
can be however you want it to be. So
Mm.
if you have two very different children, or more than two children, with very different individual needs, one of them might go all out for the Christmas dinner and love it, love all the trimmings. Another one, like you say, might, really struggle with that and just have peanut butter on toast,
Yeah.
whatever's their favorite meal. And yes, it's a bit of a catering juggling act, but it's doable with preparation. And I think that
Mm.
is absolutely key, is preparation, planning, trying to foresee what could potentially happen and mitigate those stresses, that pressure. So, for example, you know, instead of just saying you've got an open door and people can just come and go, you know, just a gentle text message or something saying, give me a heads up when you're about to arrive, you know, or let me know when you're on the way so I can prepare, you know, child B. But also to just help mentally prepare yourself as the parent so that you can model, you can show your children, you know, this is how to do it, and to advocate for them, and perhaps forewarn other family members and say, you know, child B is not having a good day today, or we haven't had a good few days, and they're actually pretty exhausted. Please don't expect them to be very sociable. You know, I'm just giving you a heads up that they're not probably going to be around much. And please allow that to not be a thing. You know, don't make a big deal about it. I certainly have had to do that before with other occasions, not just Christmas. And I think if you put it like that, then, you know, it is okay to just voice that, and then it's up to the other person to accept. And if they don't accept it, then it's about enforcing that advocacy and saying, well, okay, well, this is what's happening, and if you don't like it, you can leave. And that sounds brutal, but sometimes that has to happen in order to keep your child's safety at the heart of it. And that's what it is about, isn't it? It's about safety and feeling calm and feeling okay for your children and for you. You know, if somebody's in your home who is perhaps saying, where is, you know, blah de blah, and come and sit on my knee, and, you know, or give me a big kiss and a cuddle, you know, or make sure you say thank you, all these things, you know, that do they have to be said? So it is tricky to navigate, and it takes a bit of extra planning, I think.
There is, and I was just thinking in my mind about my previous experiences with my children, and a very early boyfriend I had. His mum used to say, when somebody comes into the house, he used to say, when are you going? Not meaning, could you turn around and just leave, but more about, oh, it's lovely to see you, but how long have we got with you? But being autistic, was not able to articulate all of that. So it just came out very bluntly, like, when are you leaving? But also, I know my eldest daughter can only tolerate so much as my husband can tolerate so much. And there is that real, let's sit down, let's not have loads to drink, let's do food, let's just go. And invariably, my husband is the more itchy of the two of them. Isn't it time you're going? Have you got other things to do? But equally, it's really thinking about what are the necessities that bring a family together. And food is one of them for sure, but the children aren't expected to sit down and conform. And again, it's back to that presentation, isn't it? The expectation, do we do it differently? Or, you know, should we be trying to be more formalized? And then you think about, you know, not that many people in my world have been invited to the Queen's tea parties, but there is now an understanding that everybody's issued a formal letter of how much they can drink, how much they can eat, how they hold themselves, what to wear as a minimum. And I'm thinking, is this right? Have we got to this point where we're just being so dictating about how you can present yourself to the Queen without actually causing offence, when in actual fact, this doesn't feel right? And yet here we are talking about how do we support our children and our families more so in a way that actually we do need to think about doing it differently, and we do need to challenge it, because like you say, your castle, your home is your castle. This is how we do it. I'm thinking to myself that we need to feel okay setting the boundaries, setting the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and also to reiterate and to model to our children that it is okay to say no. It's not defiance, it's not naughty, and to just keep saying it. You know, it's okay to not be okay. It is that mental health aspect, isn't it, of, you know, I can see that you're perhaps feeling really uncomfortable. You know, perhaps you've got a shy child who really does struggle to say anything, you know, in a busy environment, whether it's family or not, and you know, to just have a little quiet whisper in their ear and say, you know, are you feeling okay? And if you're not feeling okay, go to your room. It's all right if you want, go to your room, or try and, you know, divert other people away. I think there's a bit of fielding to do, isn't it? It's a bit like playing a game of rounders. You're sort of trying to catch the ball of a conversation, perhaps with one family member, while throwing a ball to your partner, you know, get the turkey in the oven or whatever. And so it becomes, again, like this juggling act. And I think, simplify, for goodness sake. You know, what is wrong with simplifying it and reducing the amount that you do to a minimum? And that is okay. And just keep saying to yourself, you know, this is okay. I no longer feel guilty for saying to people, I'm not going to do cards. I haven't done cards for quite some time because I don't agree with all the paper and the wrapping paper and things like that. I haven't gone all out for wrapping paper as well for the same amount of time. So probably these last 5 years, I have fought the guilt, because I know for a few key family people that's still expected that I send a card and wrap presents. And I have written a letter, perhaps, to tuck into a card and say, this is the last time I'm going to do a Christmas card. And I did that a few years back. And still I get the odd card. I mean, the amount of cards I receive has massively reduced. Don't get me wrong. And also that is one of the effects of social media, isn't it? Because we can send an email, or we can send just a few Christmas emojis if we can't think of the words. You know, it's just a case of reaching out again in a simple way. And if I see the person, if I know I'm going to see the person, then I certainly am not going to send a card. You know, I can just wish them whatever I want to wish them. Same with New Year. You know, I've forced myself so many times to be the life and soul, you know, fulfill that party Susan, you know, that different person who is the light and soul. And invariably that was through alcohol, that I was that person. And last year I didn't have a drop of alcohol. I think maybe one little glass of Baileys, because I do like my Baileys. But yeah, I didn't force myself. And I just remember thinking, actually, I quite like not having a stonking hangover. I quite like not feeling sick. And the same with the food, you know, it's okay that I'm not eating too much. You know, I don't need to buy extra. I think it's been a process. You know, like with anything, like with any change that you make, it is small steps. And I think the more that you communicate that and say, this is what's going on for me, this is what I would like to happen, and are you with me or not? And if you're not with me, so be it. But this is the way it's going to be.
going back to the idea that we need to think about pre-planning, I absolutely get that. But also, I am acutely aware that over the last few years, I've been more kind of having family discussions in the run-up. What do we do? What do you want to do? And invariably, what I found is that this pressure is slowly but surely decreasing, like you've acknowledged. But also, I'm aware that, so for example, my siblings are no longer making that push, you've got to do it. And I think part of it is because my mum's since died, so there's no longer the pressure from her onto them, onto me. But also the fact I'm so busy doing other things, and that for me, what I truly want is that very little pressure to have that pause, that break. And my children don't get to see me unless it's either super early in the morning or late in the evening. Yes, we have lots of texts and telephone conversations throughout the day, but again, it's very much in and around my clinic. So to have me undivided attention, as it were, relaxed on Christmas Day, on Boxing Day, to them is more than usual. And because it's so relaxed, it stays relaxed. And there's something really powerful in that, it feels like. So, I love the idea of making pancakes. I'm definitely going to put that forward as a suggestion. That's just, nobody likes Christmas cake. Who likes Christmas cake with fruit in it? Sensory, all that. Quite happy to eat marzipan. I'll put some marzipan on my pancake, not a problem, job done. But there is something about this, with this pre-planning, there is something about this communication, isn't there, to kind of go, what would people feel comfortable with? And I know that some families feel truly obligated to go and see family because they haven't seen them. And if that works for you, that's fantastic. But when for a lot of families, it just feels more pressure. Again, COVID has helped us out hugely in some respects, has it not, with Zoom? You don't have to go and sit in a car for 9 hours fighting with everybody else on the motorway to then go and see people. You can actually do it on Zoom. And when you're on Zoom, you literally can be there for as long as you want or as little as you want. Whereas if you go physically in person, you're stuck there until you go. So I'm thinking that Zoom is a very valuable tool in helping us with that understanding of pre-planning and communication, because it could be used quite advantageously for us autistic families who are really not great at spending time and traveling time. And I know some children and young people are really not comfortable with Zoom, but if they thought they could get away with doing 2 minutes, hi, bye, that seems quite a good alternative. But equally, if there's no pressure and the expectation is, well, we're going to do it differently because we are different, that seems to take away from the pressure again, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's embracing the diversity, as with everything. I think, that's what that is the motivation. It is about finding out your motivation, what motivates you in a positive way, and what is demotivating.
Yeah.
And minimize that. So just make those two lists, perhaps. And once you've done it, you've done it. You know how to ramp up the positives and negate the pressures. And I think, I'm all for the primal scream. Do what you want, when you want it. What is it? I've forgotten I was thinking of that song earlier. Now it's gone out of my brain. My attention differences have kicked in. It's the same with singing. because I still love a sing song, and I think, you know, do we have to have all the Christmas carols? No, we can just put on whatever lovely music really gets us going, and, you know, yeah, embrace the diversity. I've just had another knock on the door, and that was a bit more frantic.
That is so perfect timing.
I've got to
come to
go.
the end.
Yeah, nice to see
Merry
you.
Christmas to those of you who say Merry Christmas. Have a lovely festive holiday to the rest of you. Take care. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time.